Before we continue with BattlefieldOne podcast, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for choosing us for being a primary source for entertaining and educational discussions about this amazing FPS franchise that we all love. It means everything to us, and your unbelievable support is only motivating us to continue on this amazing Battlefield journey. Without you and our amazing patron supporters, this show wouldn't be the same. If you want to know more, please go patreon.com/TheLankySoldier or wait for the middle of the show for more information. How your support means everything to us. Thank you for listening to us, and please enjoy the show.
But then when you've got Angel screaming, Angel does it again. And
that was something, right?
That was something.
I'm sorry, you cancelled the support for the game a month ago.
Why would they even host a trade?
I don't know.
And I sit down and he picks up one donut and eats it. So you want to QA games?
When the rubber meets the road, they're gonna be like, oh my god, I don't like seeing Mario get his skull smashed.
Oh, I would love
It
to see
doesn't
that.
work.
I would love to
Yeah,
see
again,
that.
like I said.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of BattlefieldOne podcast, episode 33 if I believe. My name is Tom, also known as the Lanky Soldier, and you guessed it, we talk about Battlefield here. I mean, not hard to guess, BattlefieldOne podcast talks about Battlefield. Easy to understand. No matter where you start, Battlefield 1942 or Battlefield 2042, there's always something we're gonna make you mad about. I mean, okay, alright, seriously. No, thank you for tuning in, we appreciate every single one of you listening to our podcast, our serious discussions about Battlefield, and hopefully this episode won't be any different. As you probably figured out by now, I'm all by myself today because Ray is working, Andre is working, and because I was not planning to bring a guest. To be fair, this podcast, this whole episode was not planned entirely. I just had 3 hours to spare, so I'm like, you know what, let me just sit down and just record a quick one, let me just gather some quick notes and just talk about something that is happening in the Battlefield franchise right now, and something what happening with the podcast and all that kind of stuff. I think it's just a perfect opportunity to just be more open about everything that is going on, and because it's only me today, I'm like, you know what, let's just have a one-on-one with you guys and just explain how the podcast is doing, what we planning for the future. How's the Battlefield franchise doing these days and so on. And if you're new here, usually we don't do that kind of stuff. We usually just go have a topic and we talk about the topic. So, because we don't really talk about ourselves that much on the podcast. And this is going to be one of those rare episodes where I'm going to talk about what's happening with the podcast, how the podcast is doing, how everything is going. Well, of course, we're going to talk about the leaks, tweets from developers, more leaks, more comments from developers, how's our podcast got impacted by all of this, how it impacted me as a host and producer of this show, and I'm sorry if I have to have a gulp of water sometimes. I don't know, something's in my throat, like stupid phlegm, and it's kind of hard to get rid of it. Also, I'm by myself, so please forgive me, But anyway, before we continue, we have time codes, so if you don't want to listen to the whole hour, feel free to skip to the topic you want to listen. I always recommend to listen to the full context, of course, but if you don't have a full hour, time codes are there for a reason, so use them to your advantage. Follow our socials, of course, that are linked in the description. Stupid Twitter, wannabe X, Blue Sky, TikTok, Instagram. We have all that, so do follow us. Leave a rating, of course, on Spotify, whether you like the podcast or hate the podcast. I mean, I hope you enjoy the podcast, and we'll leave a 5-star review. But if you don't, that's okay. Be honest with your review, and we'll do our best to improve it. And if you do have any feedback about the podcast, maybe you have comments, maybe you have questions that you want us to answer, please use the Google Forms document that is in the description. No account needed. Just start typing whatever is on your mind and just press send. It's the easiest way to contact us. It's the most direct way to contact us, wherever you listen to the podcast, on Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, whatever the case may be. And I understand you don't have a social media account, or you don't want to email us, that's fine. Just click on that Google Forms document in the description. Just click on it, start typing, and just send. That's it. It's that easy. You can send anything you want. I don't care. I read all of it. And if it's good enough, we'll mention it on the show, because sometimes there's some good conversations come out of that, which it did a couple of times. So yeah, also, of course, join our Discord, of course, which is a brand new thing for us, but I love our little gaming community that we have there. And I would like to see it grow further. And honestly, it's the easiest place to contact us. Discord. I mean, Jesus Christ, just tag us in Discord and talk to us directly. That easy. And of course, as you've been hearing the ad, almost on every episode. If you're a returning listener, you probably know about that. But if you're a new listener, we do have some ads about our Patreon, which is patreon.com/TheLankySoldier. And today's episode is basically an extension of that of the Patreon episode we did a couple of days ago with me and Andre. So the last episode of Live Gaming Gathering on Patreon was me and Andre talking about the Battlefield leaks that happened, and more importantly, what is the future of this podcast? What is the future of me as a content creator? And I'm debating if I should quit YouTube, because I haven't been posting for a while there. And I explained on Patreon why I don't post on YouTube that much. And all my focus is literally just on this podcast. And I explained everything to Andre, what kind of challenges I'm dealing with making content. And I'm realizing slowly that it's probably not worth the effort, And when it comes to effort, I have to be very specific where I put my time regarding production. And this podcast is my priority so far. But then again, I discussed the value that YouTube sometimes brings. It would be a shame not to use it somehow to market the show or market myself, or whatever the case may be, as a content creator, that kind of stuff. So on that Patreon episode, we talked about that kind of stuff, and it was an hour and 20-minute long discussion, about Battlefield leaks and all, and my conversation, like my topic that I was like, I'm thinking about quitting YouTube, all that kind of stuff. So basically, today's episode of BattlefieldOne podcast is basically extension. Well, we'll see if it's gonna be an extension, but I just want to talk about it a little bit. I just want to extend on those points that I made on Patreon, and maybe you'll be interested in the Patreon conversations we have. So yeah, it's basically extension of of that episode, patreon.com/TheLankySoldier, and after that, we will discuss some comments from developers, some leaks that happened in the last couple of days, which caused a lot of interesting conversations from the Battlefield community. And yeah, and I understand you might not be interested what I have to say about this podcast. Oops, I dropped something. Sorry about that. So like I said, you might be not interested what I have to say about the podcast and you're just here for the Battlefield news. I get that. But the reality is, if something happens to me or I lose passion for this podcast, I lose passion for what I do, and there's no more BattlefieldOne podcast. I do this for the love of the game. Let's be honest, I do this for the love of the game. Everything we do here is for the love of the game. Sure, we try to be as professional as possible, but at the same time, we're just a bunch of idiots talking about Battlefield, and we don't make this for a living. Patreon does give some, money back, all that kind of stuff, but again, this is all for the love of the game. If I lose passion in making this podcast, I don't think I will continue with the podcast, because I want you to be interested. I want you to be interested in our passion for the franchise. If we don't have the passion for the franchise, I don't think you want to listen to that. It's not going to be interesting to listen to that, because it's just going to be another bitching contest about the franchise, whatever the case may be. And I don't think I want that. I don't think you want that either. That's why I want to talk about a little bit about the show, how it's going and everything. And regarding the show, by my realistic standards, BattlefieldOne podcast, I'm very glad how the show is going. We're growing, slowly but growing. But my more ambitious standards that I have internally, that I always try to uphold, I believe we can do better. I believe we can grow more. There's a big audience out there that I have no idea that we exist, because of who even thought about, a podcast about Battlefield franchise. Like, finding a Call of Duty, like a podcast about Call of Duty alone is like, you host a Call of Duty podcast. What is this? And so you can now imagine what kind of challenge is to hold a Battlefield related podcast. Like Battlefield, it's like, how many games do we have every year? Like not even every year, every 3-4 years, like we have a Battlefield game. And like, what is there to talk about? Well, believe it or not, there's loads of things to talk about, and the franchise is really big in its like history and developments and everything. And the reason this podcast was rebooted in the first place, not to rely on news, because this is a reboot of the show. Back in the day, back in 2015-16, we had BattlefieldOne podcast going. We had 41 episodes done by then, and at that point we realized, like, we kind of talking about the same thing non-stop, and we always relied on news for, from DICE or EA in general, just to give us something to talk about. And as I was rebooting the show, I realized, well, we can't rely on that. We have to rely on ourselves to produce the content. We can't rely on EA to produce the content for us. And funny enough, I literally said, was it maybe 20 episodes ago? I literally said, like, they will never bring CTE back, because it would put them on a, what's the word I'm looking for? Under the microscope, it would put them like we would be paying attention to everything they do in CTE. Well, technically we did not get CTE back, but we got Battlefield Labs. So that kind of, which helps us to produce more content as it goes on, like, you know, talk about the leaks, how the game will work and so on. And we don't know if the game is going to come out later this year. We don't know that. But anyway, point is that we rebooted the show with the idea that we can make the content ourselves and don't rely on the EA, DICE, or Battlefield Studios these days to produce the content for us. Like, we're not going to rely on them to produce the content for us. You know, that's what I'm trying to say. But again, yeah, who even thought that hosting a Battlefield podcast, even the idea of just having a Battlefield-related podcast is just like so out there. It's like, why would you do that? And I remember my favorite place of all places, Battlefield subreddit. There was a comment or post by someone saying, "Oh, who's your favorite YouTubers?" Right? And good or bad, I know it's up to you to decide, guys. But I decided, you know what? I'll throw my hat into the ring. I'll just say, listen, yeah, like I'm glad because someone's mentioned the poster literally mentioned, "Oh, my favorite YouTuber is Flakfire. What's yours?" and so on. And I just comment like, "Oh, would you like to check us out, right? Would you like to check out BattlefieldOne podcast? Because we had Flakfire on, not on BattlefieldOne podcast direct, we had Flakfire on Live Gaming Gathering podcast, which is the old podcast that became a Patreon exclusive podcast now. But you still can find that episode in the public, you know, on Spotify. If you just Google Live Gaming Gathering, you'll find episode with Flakfire. But anyway, the point was that, like, hey, we had Westy on, we had the former DICE developer on, you know, we had Flakfire on. We also have another YouTuber coming on the show on the next episode. I will not mention who he is, but if you follow the Twitter news and you follow specific Battlefield YouTubers, why is my phone blowing up right now? Not important. Anyway, sorry about that. So we have a YouTuber coming, a very controversial YouTuber to some of you, coming on the podcast on the next episode, and it's gonna be interesting. Anyway, so we have some people on, and on that subreddit, I literally said, "Oh, check us out, you know, because we had your favorite YouTuber on the podcast." Oh God, I just realized I'm not recording on the OBS. Oh, that's fine. Okay. At least Audacity is recording. Wow, this is what happens when you record by yourself with no plan whatsoever. And you just realized, oh, your OBS is now recording. That's fine. I have Audacity running in the background just as a what's the word I'm looking for? As a backup. Well, professional as hell. That's what happens when you host by yourself and you're not prepared. You just decide to do like a quick one with no notes or everything. Yeah, I do have notes, but they're like really light. Anyway, going back on the story. As I was saying, I posted, you know, advertising the podcast on that post on the subreddit. And that got downvoted to hell because people would say, "Oh, you're just advertising yourself," and so on. And don't advertise yourself. He just asked, "What's your favorite YouTuber?" And I'm like, okay, I was just being nice about promoting the podcast. I mean, like, I'm technically a YouTuber or whatever, a content creator. So, hey, you want to check us out? Maybe we can be your favorite ones. Like, you know, I try to be nice about it and everything. And guys just like, "Oh, you..." Some guy tried to argue with me like, "Oh, were you advertising yourself?" I'm like, okay, dude, I'm just being nice about it. I don't want to start a fight. And he's like, "Well, you host a Battlefield podcast, so you're the problem." I'm like, okay, sure. So me hosting a Battlefield-related podcast, I'm the problem here, apparently. But, you know, I don't know. It's just like the Battlefield subreddit in general is like such a toxic environment over there. It's just... Listen, I get myself involved there. I really try to, like, sometimes, like, I'm the person that doesn't know everything. Of course not. I don't know everything. I'll be the first one to admit, like, just because I know a lot of things about Battlefield. I kind of understand how the game development works. I understand how business works and everything. Like, I get that. Like, I've worked in some of the gaming publishers. I worked at Sony, for example. Like, you know, I understand how gaming publishers work. Not all of them, of course, because they all have different ideas how they want to run a business, but not the point. I understand how the gaming industry somewhat works, you know, even though when you more understand, you kind of becomes more complicated, which is the case. Like, people think gaming industry is pretty easy to understand, but it's not, trust me. Anyway, what I'm trying to say is, I'm not always right. But the idea is like, you're gonna cuss me about, oh, you host a Battlefield-related podcast. Well, what do you know? I'm like, yeah, I know a lot of things, boy. There's a reason why I host a Battlefield-related podcast, because the reason the show got rebooted is because I know a lot of stuff about this franchise. That's the point, you know. And there's a reason why developers and YouTubers and content creators, whoever, want to come on this show and talk to us about anything Battlefield-related, because we understand how the cookie crumbles, you know. We understand how this all works. But yeah, anyway, continuing. So if you're a listener of ours, right, and patrons maybe not your thing, and you can't have another subscription going in, you know, you can't have another subscription going in your life. I fully get that. I get that. But if you're still, you know, you're still an extremely valuable member of this little community. Just because you listen to us, you know, it's so amazing. Thank you guys for listening to our podcast and everything. Thank you for engaging with everything and so on. You know, you're just because you decide to listen to us, you're such an extremely valuable member of this show, because you want to listen what we have to say, and you want to listen what other people have to say about this franchise. And that is amazing. And like I said, join our Discord, share the podcast with people, share our clips and thoughts on Reddit, Twitter, Blue Sky, wherever the case may be. Start a discussion. Hey, I love these guys and love what you're doing. So I want people to listen to them and start a conversation that I can guarantee you, developers at the Battlefield Studios actually want to hear, you know, what we have to say. You know, I know we have developers listening to this podcast. I know that. You know, I can see you guys. I can see you. It's fine. And if you don't want to interact directly because of, you know, legal reasons or whatever the case may be, I get that. I fully get that. That's fine. But you can always contact me directly, and you know where to find me. It's that easy. I'm a really easy person to find. You know, but just because you listen to this podcast, you're such a valuable member of the community, of this little community we have. And if you're not a Patreon supporter, that's fine. At least you can join as a free member, at least, you know, and get all the episodes, you know, maybe not early access because it's a perk, but you can get them ad-free anyway when they're fully out, so you don't have to listen on Spotify. You can listen on Patreon and ad-free, you know, that kind of stuff. You know, and like any independent production about any gaming franchise, we call out shit decisions and opinions that developers sometimes do on this franchise. Now, you can find many times on this show, I call out DICE on multiple things about whatever the case may be, and I'm not sugarcoating. That's the beauty of this whole podcast in my eyes. We don't sugarcoat what we have on our minds. Like, if we think it's a shit decision, we will say it's a shit decision, you know? And we also, praise them for many good things before. So it's never black and white like people love to think. It never is. And you need to find the right balance all the time, regardless of the topic we have at hand. Like, it doesn't matter what topic we have. Is this beneficial to the players or the studio? Is this fun or not? Is this a good idea or not? Is the developer is right or the player base maybe is wrong? You know, if you read the Battlefield subreddits, majority of the time the Battlefield players are wrong in this case. But mostly because I think they're wrong is because they don't see the full context. They don't see the full picture of what's going on with the gaming industry, how the Battlefield franchise is shaping up to be, and what challenges they have to release this game. You know, people kind of want we just want a Battlefield 4 remaster or Battlefield 3 remaster and call it a day. Okay, sure, you're gonna get your game. What are you gonna do after that, 3 weeks later? Sure, you're gonna play for a little bit and gonna get bored of it. And there's some hardcore people's just gonna play this for the rest of my life. Like they do with Battlefield 3 and Battlefield 4. I get it, good games and so on, but times move on. And this game is very expensive. We 4 studios are working in this game, you know? But yeah, this podcast basically exists as a middleman, a conversation starter, or whatever the case may be. This podcast exists to bridge the gap between developers and the player base, you know? It's about, finding compromise, finding a conversation, how can we improve this, how we can do that, and so on. Developers can be wrong and right, and the player base can be wrong and right. There are many moments where developers were wrong, and many times the player base was right. Happens both ways. It's never a one-way street, like I said, never black and white. You know, and there's thousands of people working on this franchise. We will never agree on everything. There's no chance in hell But that's okay. We might not agree with everything, but that's okay. This is why this podcast exists, to filter all the opinions we have, or we, not only us Battlefield hosts, but what the Battlefield community has, what the developers have. Like we all people with different opinions what is best for the franchise. Some people have more power in the franchise, some people don't, and some people just they're just a regular casual Battlefield player that wants to listen about Battlefield, what's happening in the franchise, and that's fine. It's literally fine. And that's why this podcast exists. And we're gonna talk about that later, actually, about the compromise, because there's something, for example, I do not agree that happened in the Battlefield Labs playtest. There's something that is happening with the tanks, for example, and I do not fully agree with that change. But just because I do not agree with that change doesn't mean we can't find a compromise, because at the end of the day, one of the lead developers actually, I'm gonna mention his name later, he said, maybe like 10 years ago when we were talking in private and so on, he said that in reality, game development is not democracy. And he is right, because at the end of the day, it's their game. It's DICE's game. It's not DICE's game, actually. It's DICE, Motive, Ripple Effect, and Criterion. It's their game, They're the ones that making the game. Byron Beat and Vince Zampella are responsible for this game. And it's their vision. It's their game, and the most they can do is just listen to our feedback and maybe improve some stuff to make it improve whatever the case whatever we're talking about. So it's about compromise. But yeah, Battlefield 1 podcast exists for discussions, being open-minded and just be aware of what is going in the franchise from players and developers' point of view, from their point of view and so on, whatever the case may be. This podcast exists to discuss that. And I know some people said to us that for a production like ours, for example, that we have too many ads. And let me be honest with you all. We have ads, yes, because we have a Patreon that is thriving and we produce a lot of exclusive content on our Patreon. Again, patreon.com/TheLankySoldier. It's not perfect by any means, but it's getting better every month, and it's amazing what we have produced so far. Naturally, we have to promote that. Naturally, how you gonna know about this Patreon if we don't promote that, right? So we have to promote the Patreon, of course. We have to keep pushing, and realistically, people don't really want to pay for content. I get that, but we're not forcing you. That's the thing. We're not forcing you. What we're offering on Patreon is an extra content when you're done listening to Battlefield 1 podcast episodes. This is an extra content, and honestly, I'd rather have ads, that are pre-recorded than me telling you about our Patreon every time, in a different voice. It's fine for new listeners, I guess, but you're not just a new listener. When you listen to one podcast and you listen to the second one, you're not a new listener anymore, but regular listeners that haven't subscribed yet probably won't. I get that. They probably won't. If you're listening to this podcast for ages and you haven't subscribed or joined our Patreon by now, you probably won't, because I can't convince you to join. But I can encourage you to join, whatever the case may be, and maybe those ads will help. I'm glad that you're listening to us, but I imagine you don't want to listen to me telling you the same thing non-stop. So ads it is. And if you're savvy enough, you can skip those ads. I'm pretty sure if you listen to this on Spotify or anyway you listen, I'm pretty sure you're savvy enough. You can skip those ads. You know what they're gonna be and so on, so you can skip them, and that's fine. And if you actually invested what we're doing with the Patreon and everything, and actually give a shit about us and our production, now I'm not saying you don't give a shit by not listening, like you listening to the podcast and only listening to the podcast and you don't give a shit. No, that's not the one thing. But I understand, like financial situations and so on. I get that. I fully understand that. Like I said, people don't want another subscription on the end. Fully get that. It's reasonable and so on and all that kind of stuff. But at least I encourage you to join as a free member, because we offer ad-free episodes over there no matter what. So whether you're a subscriber or not a subscriber, doesn't matter. If you join a Patreon as a free member, you don't have to listen to this episode, wherever, on Spotify or anywhere else. You can just listen on Patreon and you won't get any ads. Doesn't matter if you're a free member or a paid member, doesn't matter. The point to join a Patreon that you get something out of it. You get some sort of benefit out of it. So you don't join just for the sake of it. You join for some sort of benefit to you. So if you hate the ads, I do encourage you to join as a free member at least, so you get those ads, you get those episodes. You're not gonna get ads. You're gonna get those episodes ad free. You might not get the early access because it's a paying tier benefit, but you'll get them the same time as you get them on Spotify, and you get them ad free. It's a benefit. Just joining as a free member. You don't have to pay anything. Just join as a free member, you get them ad free. Realistically or not, realistically, we're running a small business here, and honestly, we do some really amazing work over here. And I would like to, it would be great to be compensated for the production values we provide. And I'm extremely grateful for every second you give to us, your time to listen to us. But with all due respect, I'm not Facebook or Amazon or whatever. I'm not a big company, whatever. I'm not a big real company. I don't collect your data and sell it to someone. We're doing this podcast, like I said, for the love of the game. And if we can get at least paid a little bit for the effort we do for this podcast, just to pay some bills maybe, or expenses like a brand new webcam for Ray. For example, Ray just got a new PC, finally. So now he can finally play Battlefield with us on somewhat decent frame rate, And some of it actually did came from Patreon, Not much, but something came from it, And now he can actually play the games properly with a decent frame rate and judge the games properly, whatever the case may be. So, and honestly, our production values in general are extremely high here. I was talking to a future guest that's coming on the next episode. Our audio is always on point. We always do the research. We always do the notes. Well, maybe not this particular episode, but just because it's just me talking to you all about the, about the channel and everything, about this show and so on. People like to think that we just sit down in front of our mics, quickly link some stuff in our Google Docs and just start talking. No, there's so much more. We actually have to structure the show. There's so much stuff happening behind the scenes that even Patreon users that subscribe to us, that are getting behind the scenes, even they don't get the full picture of what's happening behind the scenes just to produce this show. Is it hard work? Well, it depends, because depends how you look at it. Like, I still have to, because I'm at the end of the day, I'm just only one person, I have to market the show, I have to edit the show, I have to produce the show, I have to, structure the show, have to make the notes, I have to pay attention to what's happening in the Battlefield franchise. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work to keep a consistent show going, non-stop, that is entertaining, not boring, and it's educational to some people. There's a lot of things that need to be done for the show to exist. There's a lot of hard work. That's why Patreon exists, is to maybe, hey, you're not just gonna support the show for us to continue the show going, but you're also getting some content back. Even if you go on Patreon and subscribe for 1 month, just for one time, thank you so much. Thank you so much for everything. That I don't care if you don't stick along after a while, but I do believe we produce the content that will make you to stay there for a long time, because I believe we make some amazing stuff. It's that kind of it's just we make something amazing, and we don't want you to give us money just because. We want you to get something out of it. That's the point. That's why we put so much effort on Patreon too, as we put on this show. It's just, yeah. And as long as I'm the host and producer of this, this show, I will always make sure that we're not chatting shit, and we actually have research to back up. No matter what the Battlefield server might think about me, or whatever, about my opinions, or how I presented the idea, it doesn't matter. I will not chat shit. I will actually give you the actual proper feedback and the research and everything. I'm not coming from just on my emotions. I'm coming from facts. You might hate me for that, but that's fine. Facts are facts. You can't change the facts. Of course, there will be moments when someone will say something stupid. It will happen, but that's okay, because will correct ourselves. And I'm pretty sure it happened a couple of times that Ray or someone else said something stupid that just doesn't make sense, and I have to correct him on the show. But that's fine. Like, we're all human beings. Just happens. And sometimes I'm wrong. Sometimes I have a really ridiculous idea, and Ray has to come in and maybe he'll correct me. Happens. But we've always been honest about that, and we always correct ourselves if we have to. You know, as long as I'm the captain of this ship, we'll always aim for educated opinions with research behind it. That's the goal of BattlefieldOne podcast, always been and always will be. As long as I'm the host of the show, that's the idea we're striving for. And if you can chip in for the Patreon, great. Thank you for the support. We appreciate every single patron we use. You get free or not free, doesn't matter. That's fine. I don't care. It's fine. I just care that you enjoy the stuff we produce and you enjoy the listening what we have to say. Like, I really enjoy, just because you listen to us, I thank you so much. Thank you for choosing the BattlefieldOne podcast in your daily schedule, whatever the case may be. Thank you so much. And I want to believe that the way we place our ads, the way we record our ads, and the way we produce the content on Patreon for paying and non-paying users over there, I think we're being fair and upfront about all our intentions, and goals, and whatever the case may be. I think we've been very upfront. We've been honest. We never lied about anything. There's some stuff that we probably haven't achieved, that we promised. Like, let's say there was an idea, like, release some free content for free members on a regular basis. And after discussions and everything, we realized, maybe it's not the best idea just because it takes a lot of time and we don't know what we're getting from that. And we rather put our effort to actually producing the show instead of releasing free content for Patreon free members, right? There's a balancing act all the time, but at the same time, it's never malicious. We always been upfront, what the our production time is going to. Like, it's not there just to, we're just gonna take your money and leave. No. We produce content on Patreon on a regular basis every month. I post monthly recaps, what's happening on the Patreon and everything, and what kind of content you can watch and so on. Like, there's always something happening. It's never been dull for the last year or two. Like, there's something always happening, and there's like I said, even if you don't subscribe for more than a month, my dude, you have like 50 plus hours of content for you to listen on Patreon just for like $4-7. Just for $4 or $7, you're gonna get so much just for one subscription. And if you manage to listen in 1 month, good for you. I'm not gonna judge you. Thank you for supporting us. That's all that matters. But yeah, I believe that we've been fair, upfront about everything we do. Our intentions, our goals, and everything. We've never been douchebags about, and I want to believe we will continue to be fair about. So that's my response to certain individuals that think we placed too many ads or something like that. So it's just my response to you all, because like, hey, I'm just being honest with you all. We're doing this for the love of the game. We are. But we're not being malicious about it. We're being honest about it. And if you can support us, fantastic, thank you. And if you can't, that's fine. I'm just glad that you're listening to us and you care what we have to say. And if you can spare some time, do share this podcast, share the clips, whatever the case may be. Share something from this podcast and let everyone know, like, hey, these guys are actually legit and they actually give a shit about the Battlefield franchise. They give a shit about me as a listener. And they give a shit about everything they have to say, and like I'm happy to promote them. I'm happy to promote and share clips somewhere. Just people get an idea that there's a Battlefield-related podcast that's actually really good and being honest about everything. And in that podcast is not taking sides. So, the developer is always right. The player is always right. No, we find a middle ground. It's like wannabe journalists, right? We want to find a middle ground, like what's right and what's wrong, and sometimes there's no right and wrong. Sometimes it's just a different opinion. It just happens, right? But yeah, that's what I want to say. Like I said, this part I was talking about the podcast and everything. This was just an extension of the Patreon episode that we did recently. Me and Andre, we talked about like if I want to quit YouTube or whatever the case may be. It's because it's just one of those things that I have to consider carefully what I'm gonna do next. Because for example, I have one project that I came up with that very, very early days. But I was already doing research. If that project is achievable, it's gonna take me a while to achieve it. But damn, if we actually commit to that project and it's gonna be working as intended, I think the podcast will grow really high. People will care, like people will be interested in what we are, because I'm not gonna say what project it is because it's just, again, early days. I'm not saying it will happen, whatever, but so far it seems like we can do it. It's achievable with the resources we have. It'll be a lot of work, but I think it's achievable. So I want to see how it goes. And you know what? I'm thinking to do a behind the scenes video about that, or something, or episode, or some, probably an LGG episode, Live Gaming Garden, which is the Patreon exclusive episode. Maybe I'll talk to the guys and say, what do you think about that? Because I think it's a really good thing for the podcast and the show in the future. But anyway, we'll see how it goes. Anyway, what I want to say is, thank you so much for listening. We understand that we're not perfect. We get it. But we're trying our best. We're doing this for the love of the game, but at the same time, we have to care about ourselves too. So if you can support the Patreon, and you can support the show, thank you so much, because it means a lot. It just motivates us to do more. My passion for this franchise is actually keep growing more and more as the new game is approaching. We have to be realistic too. Will the game be good? I don't know. If this game is not good, podcast might be ruined. You never know. Shit happens. Like, I have to have some backup plans in case the this next Battlefield game is not good. I have to be ready for everything. I can't just pretend and be happy and oh, this is gonna be amazing. We don't know that. We'll see.
Surprise! This was not time-stamped. We hope you're enjoying the show so far, but we need to stop for a second and tell you about some important stuff. And now that we have your attention, it's time to tell you all about our amazing Patreon that is helping us keep the show going. Patreon.com/TheLankySoldier.
Some Patreon exclusiveness. We here at Patreon would love for
You sound like every nerd in all the 90s TV shows.
Battlefield 1 podcast was rebooted in March of 2023. We learned a lot of lessons from our previous shows that consisted of 41 episodes, and we've been building amazing foundations for the future with this current show. There's a reason why we're the best Battlefield-related podcast available on Spotify and anywhere else. We've also had the honor of being listened to by DICE, Ripple Effect, and other developers as well. Now, we want to share even more with you through our Patreon.
And I've never seen her, so I will be crying and yelling, and I will not be the same person I am right now.
Yeah, I don't think I'm ready for that kind of emotion. I know we're emotionally close and everything, but I don't think we're that emotionally close.
Yeah, that will be an experience of its own.
We want to thank everyone that has joined as a free member or subscribed to our Patreon in the last year. The support is greatly appreciated, always was, and always will be. It's amazing, and it only motivates us to continue with our Battlefield journey. By simply becoming a free member or even subscribing to any paid tier, you're not only supporting the show, but you're also getting a lot of content back in return.
Right, because Call of Duty gets so annoying sometimes, I actually got so desperate I installed League of Legends again.
Oh my god. The perks of any tier is you'll get ad-free early access to all of our future episodes. You can already listen to the previous episodes ads-free as well, simply by being a free member. There's no more waiting, no more interruptions, just pure unfiltered Battlefield content straight to your ear holes, from our mouth holes, and anywhere else. It's amazing, isn't it?
The only reason why CTE did as well as it did back in the day, guys, is because it wasn't locked down to secrecy. Those that couldn't participate were still able to see what was going on. That's the point that I'm getting at right now.
We're also giving you a behind-the-scenes look at what goes into making the Battlefield 1 podcast or any other content we produce. From planning sessions, recording mistakes, and everything in between. You'll get an insider's perspective on how we bring each episode to life pretty much from start to finish.
And the reason why I'm saying
I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's your fault.
It's all my fault.
It's all your fault, Ray. You ruined the whole show. We need to cancel it again.
Just gotta can it for another 8 months again. Just appear out of nowhere with
we need to cancel it again. Ray, what the fuck did you do?
And that's only Battlefield. We're also offering access to our exclusive Patreon podcast series, Live Gaming Gathering. This is a show where friends and special guests get together and talk about everything from the video game industry to movies and, whatever else is on our minds at that particular time. With more than 40 episodes already available, there's hours upon hours of content for you to listen to.
All right, I think we need to move on because we've been kind of on this subject for about the last 15 minutes now.
Yeah.
We got a couple of things in order.
Are you feeling better now? Let this
Yes,
team off.
Yeah, you got that
I
off
do
your chest.
I do feel better. Oh no, wait, one more thing. For example, Angelo.
damn.
No, we were in
I'm not
discussion.
going to mention any names.
Trust me, these are some of the most fun and amazing conversations we have ever had on the show. Because it's just us being us, relaxed and actually having fun. Almost like you're sitting alongside us with the conversation. Yeah.
So the reaction from the Fortnite community is like, okay, every time we see a Cybertruck in the server, it's our mission to drop everything we're doing and send that player back to the lobby.
We also believe in keeping our patrons informed, so we post monthly recaps to let you know what you probably missed during last month's episode, and we're making sure that you're not missing anything important. Just recently, we opened a brand new Discord server where people can talk to each other and get all of the latest updates about our content or the Lanky Soldier channel. Find the link in the description of this episode or at our Patreon. No subscription needed.
You are as a player.
have been measured.
Yeah, you've been measured.
Because we're confident that you'll love the content we're creating, we're offering a free trial that you can use at any time. We believe we're making good content that will make you stay, and we would not be offering free trials if we didn't think so.
I've seen a lot of people like literally get excited, like, you know what? This looks very familiar, clearly ripped from somewhere, but damn it, that looks good.
So, if you want to support the show and get all of these amazing extras, head on over to patreon.com/TheLankySoldier. Your support means the world to us and helps us keep delivering the content that you enjoy. Thank you for being part of the Battlefield community, and thank you for being a part of our community, and we look forward to seeing you on our Patreon. Now, let's get back to the show.
Now, let's talk about Battlefield. Again, very relaxed. None of us on the show have none of us on the show have access to the playtest. And honestly, it's low-key been a blessing in disguise, because we can talk about it freely. No drama, it's just, or anything like that. And we're just being involved in the conversations that the community is having. We don't have to worry about NDAs, we don't have to worry about, we're leaking shit or whatever. No, I'm sorry, not having the access to the playtest, it's actually been a blessing in disguise. Because we can talk about it and we can discuss it openly. And I know some developers do want to hear our opinions about everything that's going on in the playtest. Because I know some developers are not okay with the NDA happening. Because, I think, was it Andre or Ray said, would you imagine CTE being a success back in Battlefield 4 or Battlefield 1 if it had an NDA? No, of course not. But because the game is not out, the game is officially, in quotations, not officially announced, so I kind of get maybe the legal wants to protect themselves with NDA and so on. There's loads of stuff. I get it. It's probably legal stuff. That's what it's just probably legal, just pushing them to have that NDA, and a lot of developers don't want that NDA for obvious reasons. But anyway, another point. So, more open discussions from us, because we don't have any, NDAs signed. We're just vibing here. This is just basically the waiting room for the new Battlefield game, and we can discuss stuff with no problems. So last week, there was a playtest that happened. A new map called Battery got released on the playtest, and it's the Gibraltar map that got showcased in the artwork when the game was low-key announced on IGN by Vince Zampella back in September. So it's another urban as hell map, smaller than the previous playtest map. There were no tanks, only infantry fighting vehicles, so FIVs. Interior, you can go inside the buildings. Interior is very detailed, which I love to see. To my surprise, the leaks were extremely controlled, to my surprise. They were really controlled. It took a couple of hours for the leaks to resurface, even in some cases a whole day. I think because people were trying to hide their, gamer tags and codes and everything from the screen, so people can share it freely without, having their accounts banned. So that was interesting to keep an eye on. And the point of the playtest that happened last week, or this one, was to test the gunplay, moment-to-moment gameplay, and 60Hz servers. So of course, when I read that they're gonna focus on testing 60Hz servers on this new game, in this particular playtest that happened last week, and if my experience with the community test environment, CTE, taught me anything back in 2015-16, as soon as they they say they can focus on netcode, I expect to be a laggy as fuck mess. Behold, the playtest was laggy as fuck, jumping around, skipping. It was not a good playing experience when it comes to like connection, all that kind of stuff. And it's not a bad sign. The point, as soon as they said that, I instantly knew that, hey, this is gonna be a very laggy experience because they will do their best to push the netcode as far as they can with the, with everything. They will test specific features, specific, how the connection works, how the hertz, like, because is the destruction, for example, server sides and so on. Like, I remember Andre asked me, I think it was on Patreon maybe, he asked me, like, oh, dude, I wonder how different this code is from the Battlefield 4 code for like 60 hertz servers, 128 hertz servers. And I can assure you it's very different, because Battlefield 2042, for example, that was a kind of a low-key engine reset, because they got, engine got an update and so on. So basically all the tools got updated. The starting point to making a video game in that engine, got updated. So that's why we see a lot of Battlefield 2042 placeholder animations in the playtest right now, because it's their starting point, it's their reference point, whatever the case may be. When you open when you open Unreal Engine and you press, oh, I want to make an FPS game, and you click on the FPS game, it gives you like standard, very standard FPS type of model done for you, so you can just start building from that. So it's basically that. So I think the code is very different. That's why they need to test it and everything, because the way the destruction works, the way the character model works, the way the movement works and everything, like, there's a lot of things to test. So of course the playtest was a laggy mess, because developers are trying their best to push the netcode as much as they can, see how much that the game can handle it before it crashes out. Like, that's normal. That's like, listen, we have these players that under NDA, let's test the shit of it, let's see how much we can push with the netcode, and that's why it was. So I'm kind of glad I wasn't part of that, because I'm like, it's not my thing, like, I don't really care, but like, I expect them to do the job, like I'll let the grunts, the people that really excited about the game and they want to be in every playtest, that's fine, let them play. I mean, 10 years ago, I would be really keen on playing on that playtest, but now, I as a content creator, and I do have a job and everything, like, I don't want to waste time on that, like, for 2 hours, to have a miserable experience, for them to gather data. Someone else can, be in my place and give you that data. So yeah, that's just expected. There's loads of individual things that got leaked, and I will not mention all of it, because you don't want a bullet list from me just what got leaked, but I will mention some of the interesting stuff that got leaked from the playtest. For example, there's a perk or ability, I guess it's squad perk maybe, I don't know, something, right? There's a perk or ability to have 2 primary weapons in your inventory, so you can spawn with an assault rifle and you can spawn with a sniper rifle, I guess, or 2 assault rifles, whatever the case may be. We've seen a better look at the sliding mechanic that they have in the game, and I will mention every bit of it like later, but I'm just gonna mention what I noticed from the leaks. There's a rolling mechanic from Battlefield 5 that is coming back into this game. Apparently, first-person takedowns is a thing. I'm sorry if you hear a siren in the background in London, that happens. From what we saw so far, no weapon restrictions for classes. Squark perks, spell specifications, specializations, I can't pronounce that word. Squad perks, right? From Battlefield 4 or whatever, they're back, and you can customize them apparently, so you can like customize to what perk you want in a specific slot and so on. Basically, like customizing your perks in Call of Duty. Like, that's the best example I can give it to you if you never played a Battlefield game with squad perks. But it's basically that. So you can customize what kind of perks you want to get as a squad. And apparently there's a very cool weapon inspect animation, so that lets you move around, your gun, like with the mouse and everything. You can move, control a joystick or whatever the case may be. So when you inspect the weapon, apparently you can move the gun in every direction you want, so you can inspect every detail, every angle of the gun. So how in Call of Duty, for example, you press inspect, or any other game in that matter, the game, like, it gives you some sort of default animation on a particular gun, and you just like does the like fancy animation and inspect the weapon. Apparently here you can do the animation and still move the weapon around and see what's happening as you move around, and that's a really cool feature. So I hope they're gonna keep that, because I love that. And like, it's a weapon inspect animation, but sometimes you do want to inspect the weapon like, yes, this is my gun. So I get that. Apparently we also, this is nothing to do with the leaks, but 2 weeks ago, I think, or something like that, we never mentioned it. I think we mentioned on the last episode, but or 2 episodes, people were saying that the game is too fast, apparently. So someone did the math and everything, and the game is definitely not fast. What people got confused about was the field of view. So of course, if you only play on console, I'm pretty sure you have no idea what field of view is unless you play Call of Duty Warzone, or I don't know what other games first-person shooters have field of view on console. So I don't know. I don't play on console. I play on PC. So I understand why people might get confused that the game is, that's really fast for a Battlefield game. It's just field of view, my dudes. So, and someone did some math and some testing, and apparently this new Battlefield game, it's very heavy on the movement. Funny enough, no matter what you see in the footage, it's very heavy on the movement. And apparently, Battlefield 3 is still the fastest game in the franchise, but not faster than Battlefield 2042. And it seems the game is leaning towards the slower pace. And like I said, people get fooled by the FOV. I get that. I fully understand that. But from what we see in some leaks that we've seen so far, people get an idea that this game is really fast and very twitchy and so on. Doesn't look like it. Like judging by some data and some leaks we've seen, it's rare. It's quite the opposite. Footage is not doing its justice for the people. The game is actually on the slower side, which is great. I did say when I was watching the first footage that got leaked 2 weeks ago from the first playtest, and Andre asked me how's the game. Because I never played it, but from the impression I got was basically it's like Modern Warfare 2019, feels like that, with the Battlefield 3 aesthetic, and maybe some some of the Medal of Honor Warfighter features got added into the game, which is great. Medal of Honor Warfighter was a great game, can't change my mind, and it had loads of good quality of life stuff in the game that just made the game more fun. So that's great. So yeah, the game seems like it's not going to be a very fast one. Sure, there will be some movement goals and everything. And funny enough, we have this new guest we're going to have on the next episode. We're going to talk about that. We're actually going to talk about, all that kind of stuff about how the community reacted to the movement and all the leaks and everything, because there's some really, really hard takes that we've seen that it's like we have to address them. We really have to address them because people really just smell a bit of coffee and just look at this from a perspective that is from a developer point of view and all that kind of stuff. It's just like, yeah. Of course, I'm not gonna talk about. Listen, I posted the show also women. No one was complaining about women in this playtest, but I did post a short from our last episode we did, and me and Andre literally said, who gives a shit, right? And I recommend you listen to that bit where we talk about immersion, and we fully disagree with the Battlefield communities, at least from that subreddit, about all of this. I posted a short, and that short got downvoted to oblivion because apparently people threw, examples like Hell Let Loose. It doesn't have women, but it's a video game and it's so on. Sure, but you're missing the context. One is a historical shooter trying to be a very milsim type of game, trying to be serious, all that kind of stuff, and it's based on history. So it's kind of hard to shove women, into the game and so on. So that's a different mentality. Like, context matters. And we have a new Battlefield game about it's a modern future, like 5 years in the future, right? Alternative universe, some sort of game that's more than everything, and of course you want women in your game. Just like listen, I don't want to talk about it. It's just like it just hurts my brain that people don't see the context. Of course, like listen, I wanted women soldiers back in Battlefield 4, 10, 15 years ago, and now we finally have it, and people bitch about like, oh, they're screaming my ear. Like, sure, maybe the screaming can be toned down a little bit in some cases, but again, it's just like, why are we talking about this? About some visual pixels that don't really mean much to us, but people talk about immersion that is like just. I'm sorry, was Battlefield 1 not immersive enough? Was Battlefield 4 not immersive enough? You know, from what I've seen so far, this new Battlefield game, is very immersive. From what they've seen, but people will bitch about. They always will find something to bitch about. It's just sadly the case. And speaking of immersion, people complain about hit markers. They should not be having hit markers because it's COD-like. Now tell me you never played a Battlefield game without telling me you never played a Battlefield game. What do you mean hit markers? What do you mean? It's hit markers. Every Battlefield game had hit markers. What do you mean they don't belong in a Battlefield game? So that's the conversations we have on the Battlefield server right now. Hit markers. God help us. I will not talk about this too much because I've been already talking for 50 minutes. I will not talk about it too much. I'm just going to say this. Battlefield, as a franchise, always, even though not physically, but emotionally, mentally, and by just the idea of it, always competed against Call of Duty. It was the yin and yang, right? Like, is that the way? I just probably said wrongly. Anyway, yin and yang. Anyway, one is like that, and the one is like that. Even though they're both similar, what they do, but they're both different at the same time. It's like water and oil, that kind of stuff, right? Call of Duty is one thing, and Battlefield is one thing, but they all basically compete against each other in terms of like aesthetics, the gameplay, and so on. Because one is sure has vehicles and it's like big conquest battles, and the other one is a close quarter 6-on-6 experience, you know. Then you have Call of Duty Warzone that is kind of like in the middle of it, and so on. And then you have Battle Royale from Battlefield coming up that is gonna be competing against Call of Duty Warzone, you know. And then even the franchises get mixed even more, and they're competing against each other and all that kind of stuff, right? It's like Battlefield always been an approachable first-person shooter for everyone. Like, is Battlefield always been the perfect game for that? Of course not, but it's always been approachable, and you'll be a fool not to see that way. And for some reason, Battlefield community has this gatekeeping mentality. Like, I remember I was talking to someone, and I actually might as well start this conversation right now. There was, for example, Battle Royale got leaked, right? Battle Royale got leaked. There was like some points of Battle Royale that got leaked from our famous Battlefield leaker, Temporal, and he basically went file digging, and he basically said, hey, yeah, Battle Royale is coming, right? And before I start with Battle Royale, he also leaked that some jets are coming to the game, which is the F-22 Raptor, Su-57 Felon. Then we have F-16 Fighting Falcon and GSS-39 Gripen. Like, these are jets that come in the game. Apparently, according to the data leaks, which doesn't mean anything, can be changed, never released, doesn't matter. But Battle Royale is definitely coming. So, the stuff he went data mining, and apparently it comes with solo, duos, trio, squad. Apparently you're gonna insert into the Battle Royale with the Chinook, and the helicopter, the MH-47, Chinook. I can't pronounce that. Man, I'm not English, so don't judge me for that. Apparently you can have a parachute, and you cut parachute, then there's armor, hard and soft apparently. Free-to-play component apparently. There's missions, of course, loot rarity, upgrade kits, weapon upgrades, shrinking circle, probably fire, as he presumes that it's gonna be like Firestorm. That's just speculation at this point. There's a second chance, a respawn mechanic, and it's a Battle Royale game. Battle Royale mode. Standard stuff that you can do in Call of Duty right now, in Call of Duty Warzone, and it looks like it's going to be competing against Call of Duty Warzone, this Battlefield Battle Royale, which is fine. We said a couple episodes ago, I think when we had a former developer here, we just like, back in the day, we agreed that Battlefield doesn't need a Battle Royale, but then as time went on, we realized, wait a minute, Battlefield is a sandbox. Of course it needs a Battle Royale. It can be... Battlefield is such a big sandbox when it comes to first-person shooters. It can be anything it wants to be. It can have big chaos battles. You can have a battle royale. You can have a competitive 5v5 experience, depending what's the vision of the game. And Battlefield is such a huge sandbox. It can be anything it wants to be. And if done right, going with the... Sorry, I was checking my phone. And if you're going with the... what Battlefield stands for, and I understand a lot of people have different opinions what Battlefield stands for them, A lot of people grew up in different Battlefield games, and all Battlefield games are different. I understand you have a different opinion what Battlefield is for you, but the spirit of Battlefield, I think it's universal, and if it does Battlefield right, regardless of the game mode, what's the problem? And going back to the point I want to make about gatekeeping the community, I'm just gonna say this. Like, for example, I was reading about the leaks of this, and the first top comment on that leak on the subreddit is, I quote, "God damn it, not something we need in our game." Our game. And I replied to that, "Our game, question mark, lol, okay. I personally want a battle royale because Battlefield is a sandbox and it can work extremely well if done right. But y'all not ready for this conversation." And honestly, after experiencing how the Battlefield subreddit works and how people commenting about everything that's happening behind the scenes with the leaks, about the Battle Royale, how the game feels, is the game too fast, the cosmetics, whatever the topic you can find right now, I've been really, really angry at the Battlefield community for many reasons, and this is one of them. It's just like, it's our game. Realistically, it's not our game. It's DICE's, EA's, Battlefield Studios, Criterion, Motive, Ripple Effect, it's their game. Realistically, they don't have to do anything that you want them to do. They can tell you to piss off. And it's up to you as a consumer if you want to be part of this idea, of their vision. When you watch the Battlefield, when you're gonna finally see the trailer for this new game, the reveal trailer, whatever the case may be, it's up to you to decide if you want to be part of that. Developers have they don't have to accommodate you, as a player. Like, they don't have to. If it's not for you, it's not for you. You can't say our game. You can't say it's our game when you don't represent the whole community. Like I said, I want a Battlefield Battle Royale because I want them to compete against Warzone, because Warzone does need competition. It needs it. And it's not because for the sake of competing against Warzone. It's, a lot of people, like if you're EA, right? If you're you're an executive at EA, right? You have this big franchise that is Battlefield. That is a traditional Call of Duty rival, right? Even though it's not anymore these days, I won't say it. But traditionally, it's been a rival, traditionally. So we have this franchise. A lot of people are not happy with Call of Duty Warzone, where it's going. Even though that Verdansk update looks really good. I'm really excited about that. But doesn't matter. There's a lot of people that are not happy with Warzone right now. And if you can make a Battle Royale that can compete with Warzone, and you can bring those players from Call of Duty to your game, and spend money on microtransactions, all that kind of stuff, buy the game, all that kind of shit, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you? It's just normal, simple business. You have to think it from a business point of view, right? You can't just say it's our game. It's not our game. Like, listen, I have loads of different opinions about the Battlefield franchise, and I have loads of different problems with the Battlefield franchise and some ideas that developers push for these games sometimes. Like, I do have some problems that I want to discuss, and I want to talk to developers like, listen, this is not a good thing. Yeah, of course. But I can't deny or ignore the positives sometimes this franchise or developers do for this game. Like, I can't, like I said at the start of the podcast, I can't be ignorant to everything that's happening around this franchise. I can't be. Like, I will be a fool to say, all right, Battlefield has to be this way, only this way. Why? The reason I'm excited for this new Battlefield game is because it's not DICE at the helm anymore. As in, they're not the leaders, and they're not the ones deciding how the Battlefield game is going to feel, and so on. Yeah, they're working on the multiplayer section of the game, and they're working on the core features, the core foundation of the game, yes. But it's not really their vision. You know, it's not the one. They're not the ones making this last minute call. You know, what last minute decision to change something, whatever. It's gonna be Byron Beatty and Vince Zampella. So this is their vision. And I've seen a lot of people say, "Oh, why these Call of Duty developers work on the Battlefield game? It's gonna be Call of Duty and so on." I'm like, okay, so you're just gonna ignore all the positive things that Call of Duty done over the last 20 years. Yeah, don't get me wrong, Call of Duty can be toxic and stupid sometimes, extremely aggressive with their microtransactions. Yes, I know that. Like any freaking AAA game, it has some stupid shit that you can't avoid. And yes, that's true, I know that. We all know that. But you can't ignore the good things Call of Duty did sometimes. Like, you might disagree, but Call of Duty Warzone is a fantastic addition to Call of Duty franchise. Oh, people say it ruined multiplayer for Call of Duty. And they've worried that it's gonna ruin Battlefield multiplayer if Battle Royale is added to Battlefield. Let's be honest with you. I enjoyed Modern Warfare 2019 when it came out. The reboot of Modern Warfare series, and back then Call of Duty was in decline. The multiplayer of Call of Duty was in decline. Black Ops, I don't care what you think about Black Ops 4 and so on, or any previous Black Ops games, or any previous game. I'm just gonna say this, the franchise was a joke back then. Modern Warfare 2019 fixed that franchise. Well, revived that franchise. But, as I was playing the multiplayer a lot, the Modern Warfare 2019, I realized, well, I kind of get bored of it. Because I kind of get bored of it now because, like, it's the same multiplayer game. Sure, maps. I'm not gonna talk about Call of Duty in general, like about the game itself, but the multiplayer section of the Call of Duty, like, I'm kind of bored of it. And then Warzone came out 6 months or 5 months after the game came out with Modern Warfare 2019. That changed everything. Like, oh, Call of Duty is not only alive and well, it's thriving. It's just a brand new era in Call of Duty, and Call of Duty now without Warzone is nothing, honestly. And it's not that Warzone or Battle Royale ruined the multiplayer. You have to understand, multiplayer as a genre is dying. It's because there's not, like, everything you could done in 6-on-6 multiplayer, it's already been done. What kind of new things you want to introduce to the franchise that will keep it fresh? What do you actually exactly want to do? That's why Call of Duty was in decline, because we were getting the same slop every fucking year with just a different aesthetic. You see what I mean? So same with Battlefield. People don't realize. Yeah, Battlefield can be fun, big battles, big tanks, jets, and everything. But how on a day, like even when you play Battlefield 2042 or Battlefield 5 or Battlefield 1, like what exactly I'm doing here in the long run? What's the end goal here? Sure, one team wins, one team loses. Okay, what do you achieve as a player? What do you achieve as a player? Sure, I'm looking at this from a perspective that is somewhat good at first-person shooters, and it's low-key tryharding first-person shooters. Yes, I'm looking from a somewhat comparative point of view, I guess. But what's the end goal? Like, sure, I finished top of the scoreboard, 10,000 points, most revives, most kills, best KD. Maybe we lost, maybe we won. Okay, what do you achieve with that? What's I don't know. I'll go back to Warzone. That is more rewarding to me as a player, because only one. Let's say you play solos, 150 players, only one player wins the game. That is sad. Like, if you win the game and you would the winner in that solo game, G. That's satisfying. That's like, and people finally realize that with Call of Duty Warzone. They felt that's something meaningful to chase for, something important to chase. And you can't really chase that in a multiplayer setting like Battlefield or Call of Duty. It's unpopular opinion maybe to some of you, but that's the truth. A good multiplayer game alone is not going to carry the game forward. There's loads of good multiplayer games out there. Loads of first-person shooters that are really good at what they do, but they don't succeed or just die off because, well, that's done. I played for a week or two. What's next? You see what I mean? You have to bring something. You need that hook. You need that something special to keep you the game. Big battles, conquest matches. It's not that. With all due respect, I love me some conquest. Favorite mode in a whole Battlefield franchise. Maybe even at what's it called, Chainlink, right? Whatever. It's still a multiplayer game, right? It's 2 teams fighting for some flags on the map. That's it. We need something, you know? So when people say it's our game, no, it's not your game. Like I said originally, like a couple of, 10, 15 minutes ago, Battlefield means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. They grew up with a different Battlefield game, and it's up to them to decide if they want to be part of this new vision or not. That's the truth. So yeah, I'm really angry on the Battlefield community about all this, because what's the angle here, right? What it's just, yeah. Anyway, but we're gonna talk about that when the next guest is gonna come over on the next episode. Woo! It's gonna be a very spicy, interesting discussion. So please tune in for that. Right, okay, let's talk about for the last 10 minutes, I guess. Let me go through this, guys, because I don't think I will ever mention this ever again. So let me go through some comments from some developers, former developers and current developers. So let's start with the former developer. So I'm going through the tweets right now and just like, okay, yeah. Let's start with the former developer. So a couple of episodes ago, I covered this former DICE developer on Blue Sky, named Risible, and he was explaining to us the history behind development of different Battlefield games, how corporate leaders made the decisions, and how the future looked for the new game. And the key takeaway from that thread, from those couple of episodes ago, I think it was like a month ago or something like that, the key takeaway from that long thread that he did on Blue Sky, was basically that this new Battlefield game is aiming to be a safe title, nothing too ridiculous, get the confidence back into the franchise while trying to apply some of the code elements to the Battlefield game, into the Battlefield franchise. Like I said, Call of Duty did a lot of good things, and there will be it will be a shame not to use those elements back in this new game, in this new Battlefield game. Like, it will be foolish not to learn, right, or apply something. So, as the franchise is being handled by Byron Beatty, who's a group manager on this franchise, and he's one of the key figures on creating Call of Duty Warzone. So obviously, all the things he did in Call of Duty Warzone, he wants to bring them to Battlefield but of course not make Call of Duty, but just to make a Battlefield game that has some good elements in it. Like, I'm gonna say this. And Vince Zappella is basically behind the scenes, like a manager, making sure everything goes according to plan, while Byron Beatty is providing the vision for this new game. That was the messaging, basically, he said, that former DICE developer said on his Blue Sky account. That was it. That's what he said. And there was another thread about 10 days ago, I think. There was another thread by the same developer, former developer. Some opinions of his, confirmations about a new Battlefield game. I won't read the whole thing because just no point. But I'm just gonna quote some of the important stuff he mentioned. So, I quote, "Since people have been asking for my take on the leaked Battlefield 6 gameplay from Battlefield Labs, I'll try to be brief so far. It's everything I said. I'll be back in January." So basically, he's repeating what he said back then. So, remove anything controversial from Battlefield 2042. By default, revert back to Battlefield 3, Battlefield 4 feature design. 128 players is no more, back to 64 players. Modern era, Middle Eastern setting, specialists are out, classes are back, character models are standard issue soldiers, semi-generic inclusive factions to avoid politics and any national embargoes. Let's see what he says. Too long didn't read. So it looks like they're doing the best to return to 2011 and relaunch Battlefield 3. Not a terrible strategy given the state of this franchise and their big ambitions for the future. Which is, yeah, he's right. I think I said from the first time we saw the leaks on this show, I said it gives me Battlefield 3 vibes, and that's a good thing. That's a good thing. And they use the Battlefield 3 soundtrack when they show the game and everything. So I think that's what they're aiming for. And I think on the Patreon episode, I asked Ray and Andre, what kind of maps you would like to see to be remastered and so on for this new game. And I would be not surprised if they're going to remaster some Battlefield 3 map. I would not be surprised. That's I think it's a given, honestly. I mean, that's what I would do personally. So, remember this, I quote again, "Remember, this game is part one of a long-term strategy for the franchise. First, they need to reestablish the trust with the players and return to what is normal for Battlefield. In this game, that means don't do anything innovative, don't do any innovations or anything risky. Only include stuff people like from previous games. Right, let's see what else he said. Right, he talks about the dragging feature. Cosmetics, I can mention that. What was it? Oh, there's no cosmetic content in the playtest. Skins for soldiers, weapons, vehicles, or player cards. Remember, the core community does not like the cosmetics. That's straight too far from Battlefield's military team. However, the cosmetics are a huge microtransaction vector and need variety and visual flair to sell well. So, yeah, obviously, they will be cosmetics, they will try to be grounded and so on, and yeah, so let's see, nothing important here. There was mention about the plus system, don't really care, and the rest are just opinions and so on. So yeah, that's what he said. He basically reconfirmed everything that he said back in January, and these playtests that we've been seeing, the leaks from the playtest, it basically confirms that it's a really safe Battlefield game, somewhat reimagining of Battlefield 3, and that's fine. Honestly, that's fine. I have to agree with him. The way the franchise is right now, it's probably not the best idea to try to be creative with the design decisions for the Battlefield franchise. And Battle Royale is probably the most creative thing they're gonna do. But anyway, we'll see. We will see. Hey there, listener, me again. Sorry for interrupting you again. But if you're already this deep in this episode, I presume you enjoy our conversations. So why not check out our older episodes after you're done with this one?
Don't be a doobie.
Do a podcast of sort, right? We had some amazing conversations that are still relevant to this day, and we don't want you to miss them out. If you haven't already, go listen to our interview with big content creator you probably know, Westy for example, who was more than willing to have a conversation with us about Battlefield.
But then when you've got Angel screaming, "Angel does it again," and
that was something, right?
That was something. But you know what I mean? Like, the two didn't work. Like, you could have done specialists.
Or our recent interview with former DICE developer James Kono, who shared some amazing behind-the-scenes developer perspective on Battlefield franchise.
Listen to this podcast. It's awesome. I love Lanky. He's been a great resource to the Battlefield community for years now.
You're the only person that actually gave any compliment to me about anything regarding that. Long story short, we have some amazing episodes that are worth listening, and we're just happy that you're enjoying our discussions about Battlefield. And again, I want to thank you for listening, and please enjoy the rest of the discussion we're having right now. And when it comes to current developers that work on this game, there was a tweet from David Sirlin, the lead producer of DICE, that is working on this game. Fun fact, he was a UI designer for Medal of Honor Warfighter back in the day. And David Sirlin is the one that created CTE back in Battlefield 4 and Battlefield 1. So David Sirlin, important person, he's back at DICE, and this is what he said on Twitter, or X. Hey Battlefield community, I'm open to discuss public knowledge topics, but not stuff directly connected to the leaked material. In general, when it comes to that, and any topic sparking the reactions, labs exist for a reason, to allow us to nail what makes this Battlefield tick and work. This Battlefield may look to play one way, but I assure you, it will also has many layers you need to play to perceive. A key reason, outside of making Battlefield for everyone that wants to play, to use something like labs, allowing us as devs to find the best possible outcome of our designs. It also doesn't mean the feedback becomes what drives development. We use equal amounts of feedback, data, and confirmation connected to the goals we have for our various design areas. Some of these will revamp based on outcomes, but majority will come from the balance of. So what he's just basically saying, hey, labs exist for a reason, and people are really not happy with the idea, like, which kind of sparked a new idea for our episode for me, is Battlefield for everyone. It's going to be a discussion for the next episode, and maybe even a future episode, because it's such a big topic that I want to discuss. And people are really not happy about that, because, like, why not make a game for Battlefield fans and then go from there? Well, as a guy that worked at certain gaming publishers, I actually was a volunteer moderator for DICE and EA for their forums regarding CTE, and I talked to David Sloan many times. Game development is a bitch. Loads of corporate stuff happening. And if you listen to episode 28, well, it's exactly so that, remember that I mentioned about the former developer that talked about the future of Battlefield and so on. Right, go to that last episode, listen what he said, how I covered it. That's what you have to deal with as a game developer on a AAA studio. There's loads of corporate stuff that you need to go around and play with, because otherwise the games will not be made or whatever. It's really hard to make games these days for obvious reasons. Loads of moving pieces, loads of people working on the game and so on. Anyway, so I'm not gonna that's gonna be a different topic for another day, because it's really such a good topic. But he says that, hey, we're gonna gather the feedback. By the end of the day, like I said at the start of the podcast, the start of this episode, it's their game. It's their game. It's their vision. It's their game. It's their, game design decisions. But they want to gather feedback on their game design decisions. Doesn't mean they're gonna go with them. Doesn't mean they approve of them. It doesn't mean the community is gonna like them, right? If the community likes something specific, they will keep that, obviously. But if they don't like something, they will improve on that design, whatever that is. It's a gameplay element or a UI element, whatever the case may be. Maybe cosmetics or some, God knows. They will improve that, they'll work on that. But the feedback itself is not going to drive the development of this game, because at the end of the day, it's not the player base's vision for the game. It's their vision for the game. And they're the ones making the game, and it's their vision. And honestly, no matter how much I shit on DICE and developers about certain stuff, they don't have to include us in this process of development. Battlefield Labs could not exist, and who gives a damn? They can just make their game and call it a day. Sure. But they do want some feedback, but they don't want the feedback to drive the development. That's completely... They want the feedback to improve certain stuff they're not sure about in the game, which is normal. So I'm kind of glad he came out and said, listen, this is the same person that I said, democracy is... Game development is not democracy. Game development is not democracy. This is the person that told me that. And he's right. David Sloan told me, gaming development is not democracy. And he's right. It's not. Because it's their vision, their game, and honestly, be glad they even deciding to open the servers up for us to play, even for the limited number of people that play the game. Just because the amount of data they're gonna get just from that is amazing. There's so much things they can gather from that and just improve the game moving forward. It's just amazing thing. So I'm glad that Battlefield Labs exist. I never believed that they're gonna bring CTE back, but CTE is back, even though under a different name. That's fine, doesn't matter. I'm glad it exists. And speaking of some things that don't make me happy, for example, remove the the unlimited ammo in the tanks. This one guy said, remove the tanks from having to return to an ammo station to refill the vehicle ammo. An awful design choice to put into Battlefield 5. Do not put it in the new game. Remove it completely. Please, and thank you. And David Stern basically replied, said, we want balanced tanks and powerful tanks worthy of the name. There's few things forcing tanks to be active outside ammunition. This approach is not Battlefield 5's. It's something that exists in Battlefield 2 as well. And a key to a good version is placing the resupply stations centrally, to a specific location and so on. And I fully disagree with that. I'm not a fan of the resupply stations for tanks, because at the end of the day, it's going to make the tanks be very campy. It's not the same era of playing video games, because people are really good at video games. People are really good at, destroying tanks and so on. And I replied to him, I personally against resupply stations, but I'm offering a compromise. A perk or equipment, some sort of that makes the ammo unlimited in tanks. At least that way, there's a conscious decision to sacrifice something to avoid using those resupply stations. And the reason why I'm against resupply stations, because good players will learn those resupply stations are, and every time a tank wants to go, run away from battle, resupply and everything, they will be the most obvious places to be, how many mines you're gonna see around, resupply stations. Good players will learn where those resupply stations are, put some mines, and tanks will get killed and destroyed. Sure, you can see the mines, but again, it's just wasting you time on resupplying and doing like going back into the battle. And like, even if the resupply stations are literally in the middle of the flag, right, in the middle of the map, okay, do you want me to go there and just die, basically, right? Like, it's just asking for me to die. Like, you see what I mean? It's just asking, like, I fully disagree with the resupply stations in the game. Well, he did say that the LMG, the SMG, whatever, the gunner ammo is unlimited, but explosive ammo is not. So explosive ammo is limited, and the machine gun ammo is unlimited. So the key is what the number of rounds you can carry and how many tanks spawn with it. So I kind of get the idea behind it, and sure, it's a good thing that at least something is unlimited, so at least you can defend yourself in some shape or form. I don't know, again, I haven't played the game yet, so I have no idea, but I want to see how that's gonna work out in the long run. But so far, I am not a fan of the resupply stations that are happening in the playtest right now, because I know how it's gonna play. Sure, maybe I'm wrong about something. Again, I haven't played the game, but I just see miles away that something is gonna go wrong, and I'm not gonna enjoy it, and that's a big problem. But hey, there's the things that I do not enjoy in this franchise, and that's fine. That's why this podcast exists. But yeah, so there's some comments from him and so on, and he replied to some other questions that people asked, and I don't think it's any worth mentioning because it's not that interesting to you, and I've already been talking for an hour and 20 minutes, so I'm not gonna talk about it. There's also talks about about the movement and everything, but again, I'm gonna leave it for the next podcast and so on. So anyway, to end this podcast show, whatever this was, how I feel about all of this. So first and foremost, how I feel about this podcast, how the podcast is doing. I'm really happy how the podcast is doing. I'm really happy the growth we're doing. But the perfectionist, the internal standards I have in my head, I believe we can do better. And I would love all of you to be involved in this thing and promote the podcast as much as you can. If you don't subscribe to Patreon, that's okay. I'm just glad you're listening to the podcast. I'm just glad you're listening to my ramblings about this. And that's fine. That's okay. I'm just happy that you're here and we can talk about Battlefield and be involved in the discussions. So if you can, please do share this podcast, share the clips, or whatever the case may be. Wherever you listen to this on Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, whatever the case may be, share with everyone. Like, let them know, hey, we have a Battlefield-related podcast, and we're really good ones. Probably the only ones, honestly. and just like, yeah, help us out. Be involved. And how I feel about all these community leagues and everything. I'm kind of over it now. I'm like, the excitement of like, oh yeah, new Battlefield game and everything. And now we see how the new Battlefield game is looking and so on. I'm happy to wait for my chance to play the game. And I'm happy to gather all those leaks and be involved in the discussions that are happening in the Battlefield community right now. Like I said, not getting the, a chance, not getting the invite to playtest is actually a blessing in disguise because we can talk about it and so on. It's fantastic. So yeah, I'm calm. I'm vibing, honestly. I'm really calm about everything regarding Battlefield because I do believe this game is going to be really good. I have a feeling that Battle Royale might be actually really good too. Some people disagree about that, but we're going to talk about the next episode because we have a guest coming over. Was not really planned, but we talked in DMs and everything, and we organized something, and we're going to talk about it. So that should be an interesting conversation. And other than that, so yeah, I have nothing else to say. I'm just going to say, again, thank you guys for listening to my ramblings. Thank you guys for sticking around, and so on. I'm sorry if this particular episode was not the most interesting one. I'm sorry. It's all by myself. It's just me talking for a while. I barely have any notes in front of me. Like I said, I have 3 hours to spare, so I'm just like, you know what? Let me just sit down and just talk about the podcast, how the podcast is doing, what's the future, and so on. And honestly, the future is really bright. I'm really excited. I'm really passionate. Passion is definitely not dying. There's some projects I'm working in the background that I want to achieve and to make this podcast even better. and we have some new guests coming over and so on. It's gonna be really exciting. There's gonna be a boom of new listeners. So yeah, so that's kind of it. So thank you guys for listening. Thank you guys for being involved. Share the podcast everywhere and so on. Join the Patreon as a free member if you don't want to pay. That's fine. I just happy that you're here. I'm just happy that you're listening to our ramblings about Battlefield. That's it. So yeah, thank you guys for listening. I'll see you in the next one, and yeah, I'll see you guys on the Battlefield.